I want to talk about this reaction from Travis Kelce towards his head coach when he thought he was being benched.
To the fumble, he comes over to Andy, he goes, keep me in. What happened is, on the fumble, he was not in the game. Noah Gray went in, and he had to block.
So for those of you who are listening on audio, the clip shows Travis rapidly approaching his head coach, who is kind of looking off to the side. He doesn't really see him coming, and he full-on body grabs him, shakes him. He's screaming in his face. He's very animated. He's pumping his fist. He's shaking his arm. The head coach kind of stumbles and almost looks like he's going to fall over. And then he reaches out to try to console Kelce, who then storms off. Now, I was actually driving home when this happened. I was driving home. My dad had his 20th anniversary at his church over the weekend, so I was there celebrating. I was driving back, and my boyfriend was actually watching the game on an iPad, but he saw it happen and rewound it for me, and we were both pretty shell-shocked by this moment. It was a pretty violent display, even for a professional football player. And I immediately turned to him and said, "That's a red flag." And it turns out I was not the only woman whose antennas went up over that moment. I saw this thread on Twitter where someone said, "I know people are using this as a funny meme, but what he did here sets off all the alarm bells in my head. I don't like it. And I don't like how people are quick to make excuses for it, myself included." I agreed and quote tweeted that. I said, anyone who has ever worked around or experienced DV, domestic violence, before had their antennas go up when he did this. Not at all okay behavior. My friend Martha Bueno, who's a libertarian activist, said, "I think this is a major red flag. Do you agree?" AJ Brown, who is a Black NFL player, said, "If that was me, I would have been kicked out of the league." Phil Holloway, who is a conservative writer, said this is the moment Travis Kelce should have been sent to the locker room. And Doug Stafford, who is Rand Paul's right-hand man, said, "I don't care what your name is, how many all-pros you have, who your brother or girlfriend are. If you can't control your temper and almost knock me over while screaming at me as your head coach, you'd absolutely be in the locker room in street clothes immediately." I really fundamentally cannot understand how anybody would push back on this. I'm an avid football watcher. I'm a huge Alabama fan. I do know how football players conduct themselves, and of course things can get a bit rowdy and heated on the field. This was not that. This was a padded giant football player attacking his unpadded elderly head coach, physically attacking him. This is not an okay display of temper. I don't care what the situation is. This is a terrible type of behavior to display for young men and for young women who are now watching this man because he's dating Taylor Swift and looking to him as some kind of a fairy tale ending. And I think personally, you can really tell the men from the boys in the responses to people's critiques of this moment. I'm just going to read you a few of the comments I got from men excusing this behavior and writing it off under my own tweet. Kyle's Dank Liberty Meme Stash said, "Sometimes men talk to other men like men. It's okay." That's not how men talk to other men. If you were to run up and talk to another man like that in public, you could be charged for assault. T-Boo Ted Marshall said, "You've never played high-level competitive sports in your life, have you? Because I have to play high-level competitive sports to know it's not okay to assault your head coach? Come on." James Dalton said, "Relax on all that. Relax on all that. It's just red flag behavior that can get women killed. Calm down." Like, actually, no, I won't calm down. You should be more on guard against this kind of behavior and help women police themselves against problematic men who can't control their anger. I'm not saying that what Travis Kelce did was domestic abuse whatsoever. What I am saying is that there are typically signs men and women display before they ultimately become very violent and hurt their partners down the road, and this is one of them. People who cannot control their tempers and talk to other adults like normal adults, even when they are emotional or upset or aggravated, that's not normal. That's not a good look. It's not something that bodes well for their future. They need to get in some anger management classes and learn to control themselves. It is definitely outside the bounds of acceptable behavior. And I don't buy this, "Oh, you just don't know sports. You just don't watch sports. You don't know men." I do watch sports. I do know men, and I do know that this is not okay and this is not typical behavior on the field. It is unsportsmanlike. It is unprofessional. And if I was that head coach, he would definitely be benched, if not kicked off the team. And to be fair, while this is an isolated event and you can only say so much about one interaction, sure, it could have been a bad moment, it could have been an off moment, maybe this isn't typical, although I did notice many people saying that this is kind of typical and he often has emotional, angry outbursts on the field. But either way, the NFL does have a very big problem with domestic violence that has mostly gone unaddressed. The NFL players' domestic violence arrest rate is 55.4% of the average for men ages 25 to 29. That is higher than the players' arrest rates for other crimes relative to the average for men in that age group. Among NFL players, domestic violence accounts for 48% of all arrests for a violent crime. A Sports Illustrated investigation reported that from January 1st, 2012 to September 17th, 2014, 33 active NFL players were arrested on charges involving domestic violence, battery, assault, and murder. And for the record, most of these people have not been kicked out of the league or off their teams. They have continued to play football for the NFL. I find that super troubling, and what I think is even more problematic is the fact that we are consistently learning more and more and more about the rate of brain injuries that are occurring within the NFL. And not just within the NFL, but all the way down through middle school levels of beginning to play football. We know that people are sustaining head injuries that are very dangerous when they are playing the sport, and that continues to be compounded when you get to levels like the NFL, where you're playing against much bigger people and taking much harder hits. Not only can these kinds of injuries cause suicide and an early death, but they can also be very related to anger issues and domestic violence. A population study demonstrated an increased rate of violent crimes of 8.8% in individuals with traumatic brain injuries, TBI, compared to individuals without TBI of 3%. In 2009, a systemic review of violence and neurological disorders demonstrated that violence was often associated with TBI, while inversely associated with epilepsy. Now, I saw this in my work on criminal justice reform. If you dig into the case files of many people who have become violent and committed crimes, you will often find evidence of traumatic brain injuries in their past. So the fact that the NFL knows their players are sustaining these kinds of injuries, largely not getting the kind of help they need, having severe anger problems and still doing nothing about it is a tremendous problem with the league. It doesn't do society any good to try to sweep these kinds of things under the rug. Even if Travis Kelce ultimately is not domestically violent and doesn't become a problem, it's still worth pointing out to young women in your life that that kind of behavior is a red flag, that those kinds of people frequently will escalate, and that it is something they should be on guard against when they are in their own dating lives. As Midwest Gal said in response to some of my detractors in my comment section, I think we can agree to disagree on what behavior is acceptable from real men. And I think that that's absolutely accurate. Real men should not be acting this way, and it shouldn't be excused.